Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's get started. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. First and foremost, I want to go ahead and welcome everyone to this webinar. I do believe that inshallah today we're joined primarily by sisters as this is a sisters-friendly event. Inshallah, we look forward to serving all of you. And we often find that in these spaces, sisters might have questions that might be a little bit more sensitive and just require perhaps a little bit more sensitivity around them. And so we wanted to go ahead and carve out a space where our sisters can actually come and ask us questions. So before we get started, just a little bit about myself. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rahima. Inshallah, I will be joining you on Hajj. Alhamdulillah, I've had the honor of serving Hajjaj, both on Umrah and Hajj for many years now. And I have my background in the Islamic sciences, as well as education and psychology. So I find myself somehow uniquely situated to hopefully be helpful to folks in answering some of the questions that we have around the performance of Hajj, which is mostly what we're going to talk about today, but also, inshallah, in future webinars and future talks, we can talk more about some spiritual aspects of Hajj as well. And we're also joined here by Sister Khansa. Sister Khansa, are you with us?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Khansa. I am very honored to be here, alhamdulillah. I will also be one of the Hajj guides, inshallah, who will be with you in Hajj. I also have my background in Islamic studies, and I also have a background in nutrition. Alhamdulillah, both aspects I'm able to help and serve Hajjaj with my knowledge as much as I can. And inshallah, we'll be here to answer any questions that you may have, inshallah.
Jazakallahu khaira. So with that, let's get right into it. Inshallah, our topic for today, of course, is a woman's guide to Hajj. So primarily, we're going to be focusing on some of the aspects of Hajj that are specific to women, right? Because the overall how-to of Hajj, the 5 days of Hajj, we had that walkthrough yesterday, and we're going to continue to have it in the coming days. But that's a little bit more general. It covers the overall rulings, whereas us sisters do know that there are certain times where things might look a little bit different for us than it looks for everyone else. And so we wanted to go ahead and give this opportunity for you guys to both learn about it and ask your questions about it, inshallah. So just a rundown of today, inshallah, Sister Khan said I will kind of walk you through some of the information that we have that we wanted to present to you today. And we're going to leave some time at the end for folks to be able to actually ask their questions. And we know questions get very specific and very individual, in this session. So inshallah, I'm going to try my best to leave as much time towards the end as possible for us to answer everyone's questions, inshallah. So with that, today we have, or when we think about, the differences between a woman's Hajj and a man's Hajj, we have three main topics that we'd want to cover, and we want to make sure everybody is well versed in. The first one being a woman's ihram. Obviously, there are certain stipulations for a woman when in ihram that are different from a brother's, right? And then the, main thing that we're going to talk about today is the differences in the ritual worship, right? Like, what is it that is happening in those 5 days of Hajj that, Imam Suhaib went over yesterday? What is it that we should be doing differently, or we should be mentally preparing for? I might not be doing this the same way as the brothers. I might have to, think ahead of that. And lastly, of course, a sensitive topic is menstruation during Hajj. I think any of the sisters here know that during the days of your menses every month, you have different rulings from what the brothers have, whether it's the month of Ramadan or whether it's your, daily prayers, things like that. So in regards to what exactly does it look like if I get Hajj, if I get my menses while I'm at Hajj, inshallah, we'll kind of walk you through what it looks like, what to think about. And of course, inshallah, then we'll open it up for questions. Sister Hansa, did you want to go ahead and let everyone know a little bit more about Ihram 101 for women?
Yes, inshallah. So, there is a Hajj guide to women, like what we're doing right now, but Ihram gets very specific and has a lot of specific questions. So inshallah, we will be having a separate webinar just for Ihram for women, so you can ask those specific questions over there.
Yep. just to reiterate everything Sister Khatsa said, that Ihram does get very specific, and inshallah, in that session, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of like what to wear, what not to wear. We'll even talk about maybe like fabric, material, things like that. But inshallah, today we're going to focus more on the ritual worship, right? And so to just kind of get into that aspect, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that ليس الذكر كالأنثى, that the man is not like the woman, right? And that's not a bad thing, right? That's the way that Allah ta'ala has created us. And Allah has made beauty in the way that He's created us. He's created us in perfection and in perfect form. And so His rulings, they also go ahead and reflect that as well, right? So in every aspect of Hajj, we're going to kind of walk through what might look different for sisters. So I think the default that we should be operating out of is that we have the same rulings as men. And then inshallah, today we're only going to specify those things which are different, right? So overall, I want you to kind of start off with that baseline understanding of inshallah, the default will be we're doing the same things. And then right now we'll just walk you through. So for example, the first thing, which is talbiyah, right? Overall, the talbiyah is the same for men and women. We don't have different wordings or anything like that. But we do have a difference in the way it should be recited. So Sister Hansa, did you kind of want to walk us through what the differences might look like?
Yes, so the main difference between in reciting talbiyah, reciting this, of course, this as soon as you are get into the state of ihram, you will be reciting this. Everyone will be reciting this. But of course, when you are with such a big group, women should not be saying it very loud. There should be a difference. The men are the ones who are going to be reading it loud, and the women will be reading it. They can read it. You can read it loud, like, yeah, but not screaming or like as loud as the men. So again, women are encouraged to recite it either quietly or at a lower level.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would say I think a good measure of like how loud it should be is enough so that if you're reciting it, you can hear it, right? And perhaps if you have a mahram next to you, maybe they can hear it, but no one else. So I'm thinking, specifically if you're sitting on the bus or you're, walking from one place to another, as in Hajj, there will be a lot of walking. Just yourself and perhaps just the person next to you can hear you, but not so loud where it's like, none of us are getting on the mic necessarily, or we're saying it so loud that we're matching the brothers' voices who will be doing it louder, and they'll be keeping the rhythm and the flow of the talbiyah for us, and we'll be following along. And you could kind of think of like, the way you the level of recitation you keep when you pray behind the imam, right? We don't do our recitation, or we don't do our tasbihat at the same volume as the imam. We keep it much lower. And so I would say that's like a good place to kind of think of where to keep your volume at for the talbiyah. And then here for the tawaf, I think, obviously, like we said, the default is that the similarities are going to be the same. So the same way you're going to be, the same way everyone should be worshiping and making their du'as, their supplication, their adhkar, reciting Quran, whatever else it is that you want to make sure that you get done during tawaf. Here, I think this is, a point of that's worth noting is that yes, women are allowed to touch the black stone or to kiss the black stone, touch the Kaaba, just like, the men would be. But the only caveat I would add here is simply that it doesn't force you to have to kind of squeeze through a crowd of men to do that, which unfortunately during Hajj ends up being the case, right? So if there's an opening for you, and subhanAllah, you'll get there, and if Allah has written it for you, it will, He will make the way, right? If you see the opening and it opens up for you and there's a space for you to go through, go ahead. Or if there's a line for women starting for the Blackstone, you can jump in that line, right? But what we don't want, you to have to go through is being, there's everybody's is pushing and shoving, trying to get to the Kaaba or trying to get to the Blackstone, and you're forcing yourself in there. And then there's, of course, it's Hajj, so there's lots of rush and there's like a crush of the crowd, and you're being crushed against brothers who are in ihram, and it's definitely not a nice feeling for anyone who has been through it. So you definitely want to make sure that keeping your distance from those areas where it's too crowded and the brothers are really like, crowding in there, and just doing it from a little bit further, right? So the sunnah is enough. It's enough to fulfill the sunnah of kissing the black stone that you do it like through isharatan, like through your hands, right? It's enough to fulfill the sunnah that you do that. You don't need to go all the way and kiss the black stone if the crowd is not permitting you to do it. And then, of course, speaking is permitted when necessary in Tawaf. For example, if somebody's breaking off from the group, something like that, we always want to communicate, but we try to keep conversation to a minimum because, of course, we're there for ibadah. We're not there to do anything else. And then the last point, of course, is, the same for men and women. Any sort of things that are going to break wudu or whatnot is not recommended. And then, of course, now the main reason what we want to go ahead and discuss are those differences, right? What looks different for men and women. Sister Khansa, do you want to walk us through some of these?
Yeah. So there are a few main differences while doing tawaf at the Kaaba. Number one being that men are recommended, it's recommended for them to jog on the first three circuits. So out of the seven circuits of tawaf, the first three they jog. For women, they don't need to do that. They should not be doing that. Number two, men are in the two pieces of the towel of the in the when they are in their ihram, and they uncover their right shoulder. Women, of course, they don't wear the two pieces of towel. Women in ihram wear anything modest, and that's about it. They don't have to wear the two towels. Um, Again, as we had mentioned before, if the crowd is less, definitely you should try to go touch the Kaaba, touch the black stone. If as long as you're not having to push through a crowd and not having to um, like really you know put yourself in that position of being in a vulnerable position. Um, I think the last thing, again, oh, the main thing, menses, menstruation. In menstruation, you can't do tawaf. So that is the main uh basic rule that okay, when if you are in your monthly cycle, you cannot do tawaf. So you will have to work around it. Inshallah, we'll go into details about that in the next slides.
Yeah, inshallah. And just to add, so really putting in that main difference between the men and women's tawaf is firstly just the first three circuits they do a jogging. We do not jog at all. We can keep a lighter pace, and I think this gets repeated during sa'i as well. Whereas we keep, we don't have to jog with the men, and I know sometimes you'll see women try to keep up with the men or whatnot, but it's better to actually just have them go ahead, and then when they'll kind of wait a bit for you, and once you get there, then they can go forward as well. And just to echo what Sister Khansa said, that there are very specific scenarios when a sister has her menses, and we'll kind of in the coming slides go through each and every possible scenario and what she should do. But the overall general ruling is that when you have your menses, when you're on your period, you cannot perform tawaf because tawaf is within the main area of the masjid and you're not able to enter the main area of the masjid. And so for that reason, you're not able to actually go ahead and make the tawaf. So what exactly that means for your Hajj, we're going to talk about inshallah. And just as we were mentioning, sa'i, just similar to tawaf, has a time in which the men shall be jogging. Um, Nowadays it's denoted by a green light, so we don't have to get into exactly where it is, but it's a green light, and everyone will know that's the area where the men are jogging. And kind of having a little bit of a faster sprint. That, of course, comes from the ritual of Hajar alayhi salatu wasalam when she was, walking or between Safa and Marwa, there was an area where she actually couldn't see her baby, and because of that, she would go a little bit faster. And I think it's so beautiful that like this part of Hajj and this part of Umrah, part of the Sa'i is just a dedication to a mother's love for her child, right? For it's really honoring the legacy of a woman, and yet, right, the further honor for us as women is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually exempted us from partaking in it, right? So he's had the men doing the hard work of jogging, whereas we're, going to stay upon our pace. So just like we don't do, in the first three circuits, we don't go in that faster pace at the same time when the green lights come for sa'i, we do not need to jog. And in fact, as you can see on the screen, many of our scholars have mentioned not doing these things. It's better for us not to do them rather than to do them simply because this is more pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's more covering for us. And also it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us leeway and made things easier for us as well. And so we shouldn't put those extra hardships and burdens on ourselves by going ahead and doing them. And then unlike Tawaf, Sister Hansa, do you want to tell us about like what a woman can or can't do with sa'i during her period?
Yes, so the good thing about Sa'i, the place where it is, it's pretty near the Kaaba if you have seen it, and if you have not, it's not too far from the Kaaba, but it is not considered part of the masjid, so you are able to do it if you are in your period, unlike Tawaf.
Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of times when sisters are not able to pray, and they can't enter the main masjid, they'll actually go sit in the Safa Marwa area because that's close. Like Sister Khansa said, it's close to the Kaaba, but it's not considered by the scholars have deemed it not part of the masjid, and so you can actually go there when you're in your period, as well as the fact that sa'i can be performed without a full state of tahara, without a full state of purity. And so, there are rare cases where a sister might have done her tawaf and then gets her menses, she can go ahead and do her sa'i as well. And then within the days of Hajj, your Mina will look the same, your Arafat will look the same, right? And then when we get to Muzdalifah night, there we have slight differences here, right? And so the main aspect of Muzdalifah is the same. You're still spending the same night, right? The night of the ninth going into the 10th, you're spending it in the same area, and you're combining your prayers just the same, all of that. The main two things I would say that are considerations for us as women is that I want you to remember, and this picture on the screen is a little bit misleading because there's tents there. In Muzdalifah, we don't have tents, right? So it's a night under the stars, really. Um, and I think Sheikh Sohaib explained it really well, where it's like this open field and they've got mats and rugs and whatnot out, but there's no real structure. There's no tents, no building, no nothing, right? It's the sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to sleep under the stars, and that's our night of doing that, right? Sleeping under the stars, worshiping under the stars. And so, the one consideration I would say for the sisters is that because we're still in the state of ihram, right? And so we are not able to necessarily cover our face the same way, or we're not able to do certain things, is just trying our best to keep some sort of distance from the men, which again, it sounds, I think, pretty relatively easy, but when you're in Muzdalifah, you'll see just subhanAllah, it's this designated area where we have millions of people trying to spend the night together, right? So because of that, it becomes extremely crowded. And there again, there's no proper tents for men or women or anything. And so a lot of the time families like to stay together, right? So husband, wife, or father, daughter, whatever the case is. And so because of that, you have a lot of mixing of men and women. And subhanAllah, it's like the only time probably that you'll have men and women all sleeping under, in basically one area together. And so one consideration to have is that firstly, just, trying to stay either with your mahram, so that way it provides you a bit of cover, but also just having a space either that's with other sisters, which is, the way I've personally done in the past as well, is I just sat with other sisters and it's been fine. Or also just making sure you have some sort of distance from a brother where you're not like sleeping right next to one, right? Usually it's not, that complicated, but it is a consideration to have because again, Muzdalifah can get very, very full. And then I think like the other thing I would just recommend here is perhaps like having some sort of shawl or something. It's very hot, so you don't want to have a blanket. Muzdalifah night, I can tell you from now, will be very hot. Again, we're out in the open, so no air conditioning, no nothing. And it is nighttime, so alhamdulillah, it's better than during the day, but it will be June, so expect it to be very hot. So you don't want anything thick, but maybe just like a very thin type of shawl or something, just or sheet to cover your body. So that way the shape of your body is covered as well. I think that's just, a little bit of a logistical consideration. And then from a scholarly standpoint, the later day scholars, especially the contemporary scholars today, having looked at the fact that there's just so many people that come for Hajj that realistically to make everyone wait until after Fajr to go towards Mina and to go towards the stoning would be impractical, and possible, like perhaps even impossible. There has been a rukhsa, a leeway that was given in the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam actually to the elderly, to the sick, to the vulnerable, to women and children, that they could actually leave Muzdalifah earlier and go do the pelting, go do their stoning of the 10th. And so today it's become a lot more general so that a lot of people usually follow this ruling. I've done it in the past myself, where past after midnight, we actually went ahead and left Muzdalifah and went towards um, Mina to go do our jamarat, to do our stoning, and we did our stoning before the Fajr time came in. Of course, the sunnah is to wait until after Fajr, but this is specifically for those who are sick, who are weak, who are might, who fear the crowds, right? Again, we are women, so we don't want to be stuck in the crowd of men where we're being pushed around or anything. So for that reason, Rasulullah ﷺ gave us permission to go ahead a little bit earlier and go get that done. So I think those are the two main considerations that I would say for Muzdalifah night that everyone should keep in mind. And with that, that kind of takes us into the 10th of the Hijjah, whereas everything else you're doing is the same. So once your stoning is done, obviously you have your qurbani, your adahi, your sacrifice. Once that's done, you're able to go ahead and trim your hair and get out of the state of ihram. There's, I think, a lot of conversation to be had over trimming hair. Folks, we usually have a lot of questions here as well. Sister Khansa, did you want to just go over the overview of trimming hair?
Yes. So of course for men it's different, and that's what you would probably imagine, or if you go, that's like the picture that comes in your head when you think about ihram and getting out of ihram, is seeing all the men getting shaved, or getting basically a whole, like they're in a barber and they're getting a whole haircut. For women it's pretty different. They just do it, it's pretty subtle. You don't really see, well, you do here and there see, you just take all your hair, you put it to the side, you gather it, and just cut a little small piece about 1 centimeter. And then if someone has shorter hair, like, and it's hard to gather, just try your best to gather as much as you can, and just trim the sides. The easiest for many of us is just, if you have a braid, it's the easiest. The braid is already done. You just take a small scissor, take it out, and cut a small piece at the end. So it's pretty simple and easy to do, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people here have questions about how much should I cut? Did I cut too little? Did I cut too much? Am I still in a state of ihram if I don't cut enough? Right? And so here the scholars have given us a lot of guidance. I think the first one is probably the one that is most lenient and most general, which is there's no set measurement. Whatever you trim is enough. But most say either a finger span to a centimeter. And so I like to think of it as this I look towards my pinky and I look at it like this area from here, and if I've cut that much it's good to go. The other way people do it is sometimes they'll take the end of their hair, like Sister Khansa mentioned, the end of the braid or the ponytail or whatever else, and just take those strands and wrap it around 3 times and cut it. I find that that tends to take off more hair than a centimeter, but again, either way is enough. Normally when you do trim you end up around that 1 centimeter mark anyways, right? A centimeter is, it's not too much hair being cut anyways. But what I will say is that, like Sister Hudson mentioned, that you want to make sure that you're getting multiple strands. So some of the scholars say 3 strands, some say it should be at least a quarter of all of the hair on your head that's getting cut. We don't have to get too much in the specifics. As long as it's more than a few strands, inshallah, you should be okay. Again, I know a lot of people have questions here, but generally, if you're going off the end of your braid or the end of your ponytail and taking off about this much or 1 centimeter's worth, you're good, inshallah. All right, inshallah, that basically covers most of the changes that we're going to be seeing, or most of the differences that we see during the days of Hajj. Besides that, after cutting your hair, you go for your Tawaf, and you finish your final days of stoning. There's no real differences there. Again, just being mindful of crowds during Tawaf and during the days of stoning, and keeping whatever distance you need to from the Kaaba, so that way you're not getting too much in a crush of men, things like that. But other than that, Alhamdulillah, Allah has created so much ease for us that, in places where Hajj seems to be harder or there's some sort of difficulty, it's like Allah alleviated it from us, Alhamdulillah. So we don't have to shave our heads, and we don't have to run during Tawaf, and we don't have to jog during Sa'i, Alhamdulillah. And so with that, we go into the next portion. And I know that this will take some time, so I want to get right into it, which is the menstruation during Hajj. So sisters have this question all the time that I calculated the days. I looks like I'm going to get my menses when Hajj starts, or I'm going to have my menses once I get there, or I'm going to get there and then get my menses during the day of Hajj. So all of those scenarios, inshallah, we're going to try to cover as much as we can, and then we'll go from there. So Sister Khansa, do you want to go over the main rulings?
Yes. So the main basic rule for Hajj and menstruation is that number one, Tawaf is the main thing that a woman cannot do in Hajj while she's on her period. So number one, again, if you are getting it, if you are getting your period in Hajj, you can choose to do a Hajj ifrad, which means only make intention for Hajj. This is a very good option for people who are meant to get their period in the beginning days of when they land. The next again, and then there's Tawaf Wada, which is it becomes Tawaf Wada is not a part of Hajj. It's not obligatory, but it is, I think, wajib. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But Tawaf Wada is the tawaf you do right before you leave Makkah after Hajj. That will be dropped if you are done with your first tawaf, which is your tawaf ifada of Hajj. You don't have to do Tawaf Wada. You are it's
They
you
get exempt from it. Exactly. Yeah.
uh and then so getting into ihram, you can be on your period. Ihram does not have to do anything with your period because ihram is a state you go in, and you are allowed to go into that state of ihram even when you're on your period. um and then the last, I mean, the yeah, one of the other situations is that if she is not able to Sister Rahima, would you like to do this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, and I will say that this is some scholars agree with this, some do not agree with this. So I will say over here, take caution and consult with your own imam or your local scholar, whoever you follow. But this is just a general ruling that we're giving you guys, that some of the scholars do say this, that if a woman has this fear that, I haven't gotten my period yet, but I'm afraid that my period is going to come in such a way during the days of Hajj that I will not be able to finish my Tawaf al-Ifada, which is the main thing you can do. Everything else in Hajj you can do, right? Before I have to leave Mecca. And of course, nowadays, the flights and such are so rigid that it's not easy to, just go ahead and push back your flight and to make the stay longer. It's very difficult. It's very expensive, right? So because of that reason, scholars have said I've made some concessions here. Before that, the ruling used to be point blank, you have to stay in Makkah until you finished your tawaf, right? But because of the fact that, things have become difficult, they've made some concessions. One of those is that the woman can make the intention at the time of putting on the ihram that if I'm prevented from completing the Hajj, then I will exit my ihram at whichever point I am prevented, right? And this is established from the Sunnah. Again, I would say you want to talk to your own local imam, to your own sheikh, to see if this is something that he agrees with and something that you'd be willing to, consider doing. So that way, if something prevents you from doing Hajj, including Haid or including the period, you can actually go ahead and exit Ihram and you won't have any sort of dam or any sort of penalty or any sort of issues, right? But again, I will say this is a little bit of point of contention here for the scholars as well. So take it with a grain of salt in that, it's an option, but consult, right? But the main thing, like Sister Khansa said, I'm just echoing, is that overall your Hajj will look exactly the same. You do exactly the same thing. Obviously, you're not praying your salahs, but besides that, the actions are the same, right? You're going to Arafat, you're going to Muzdalifah, you're doing your stoning. The only thing you're not doing is going for tawaf while you're on your period. And again, inshallah, we're going to go into exact specifics of like when can you do your tawaf or what should it look like and things like that. But this is for those women who they know or they fear that they're going to get their period at such a time that it won't finish and they'll have to return home, right? So for them, then there's this option that you can make this intention when getting into the state of ihram. And like Sister Khansa said, getting into the state of ihram has nothing to do with being pure from your period or not, because it's a state, right? And so what you could do is you could put on your ihram from the miqat point, the point where we put on our ihram, and then once your period has ended, you can go ahead, take the shower, and then continue on like everyone else. Okay, so now specifically getting into the rulings around Tawaf al-Ifada or Tawaf al-Hajj or Tawaf al-Fard, whatever you want to call that, Tawaf al-Ziyara, right? The main Tawaf that we do during the days of Hajj or the main Tawaf of Hajj, right? How do we go about it? Um, if one has their menses, because as we all know, Hajj is not done without that tawaf. That tawaf is part of the main acts we must do in Hajj. And so if for some reason she leaves Makkah without performing tawaf, she will continue to be in a state of ihram. Obviously, it's a minor state of ihram, but still she'll continue being in a state of ihram, even though she's left Makkah. Even if you've come all the way back to America, you're still in that minor state of ihram, and you'll continue to be in the minor state of ihram until you go back to Makkah and complete that tawaf, right? So the recommendation here would not be to leave without making that tawaf, because you would have to go back in order to complete the tawaf and complete your Hajj. Your Hajj is not complete until this tawaf is done. So I know I might, be saying the same thing a couple of times, but I really want everyone to understand that this tawaf um, is so, so, so important, right? And we cannot make Hajj without the tawaf. Of course, we can't make the tawaf when in the state of when having our period, right? If for some reason someone comes out of ihram, meaning they violate the lesser form of ihram, while without having made the tawaf, then the hajj is invalid and their hajj is not done, basically. They'd have to go back and make their hajj again. Simply because, and just to kind of go back a little bit because I know we haven't fully covered ihram yet. So I want to make sure that people understand the greater and the minor form of ihram. The greater form of ihram is that normal form of ihram that you think about, that we get into the state of ihram. I can't use scents, I can't cut my hair, I can't cut my nails. All of those things are prohibited, right? Once your sacrificial animal is done and you've cut your hair, now everything becomes halal upon you. Everything becomes permissible except one thing, which is marital relations, right? So we say that you're still in a state of ihram, but it's a lesser state of ihram. You can use soap, you can use perfume, you can cut your nails, you can do all of those things, but the only you can cover your face, but you can't have marital relations. Once the tawaf al-ifada is done, then even that prohibition is lifted, right? And you're completely out of the state of ihram. So the point is that the sister who's in her menses, who's gone through all of the things of Hajj except for her tawaf al-ifada, she's out of the major state of ihram. She can wear perfume, she can clip her nails, she can cover her face, but she cannot have marital relations until that tawaf al-ifada is done. So that's the point of us saying that, oh, she's still in a state of ihram. She's still in a state of ihram. If she, for some reason, before making the tawaf falls into marital relations, then she's, going against the state of ihram that she's in. And yes, of course, this is less a ruling and more so a recommendation from our side and from the scholar side is that if you fear that you might get your period, right? If you know my dates are coming up, then everyone has a choice of whether they can do Tawaf al-Ifada on the 10th, on the 11th, or on the 12th. But we would say go ahead, do it right away on the 10th, right? Normally, my recommendation is like, there's a lot of crowding on the 10th, try to go on the 11th or the 12th when the crowding is less, right? But if you're a sister who's like my period is just about due, go ahead and get the tawaf done because if you don't get the tawaf done and you get your period, you'd be stuck waiting until your period is done just to make that tawaf and your hajj would be um kind of like hanging there mu'allaq. It'd be like in progress but not fully done until that tawaf is done. So a very stressful situation to be in. So it's better to just go ahead and get your tawaf done right away. Okay, so now what we're going to discuss is if you are one of those women who has their menses and is in a state of, has their period, I should say, during the days of Hajj and cannot make Tawaf al-Ifada like everyone else on the main dates, what are your choices? What are your options? What does that look like for you, right? The first one, Sister Khansa.
Yes. Number one, you can so again, tawaf, the days of tawaf al-ifada essentially are the 10th, 11th, and 12th of the Hijjah, which correspond to the June 7, 8, 9. And I think that's something you guys should keep note of just because if you can know when your cycle might come, inshallah, in June, you should definitely know, okay, is it before June 7? Is it before, after, or when, around that? So number one, even if you get your period a few days before and you miss those 3 days, it's fine if you are on your period. You can do it. You can do your tawaf after those 3 days. You are allowed to because you are on your period. But again, that's if you are staying. Inshallah, most of you will be in Mecca at least a day or two after Hajj. So you will have a day or two. Some people have a little more time in Mecca after. Some people have less time in Mecca after. So you'll have to look at that, inshallah. And the main thing, if you are, for example, getting purified on the last day, like right before you leave, you can just do your tawaf al-ifada at that time.
Yeah. And so just to add on, sister, because I think there might be folks who are joining us today who are not on one of our packages. If you are staying in Makkah, let's say a week over, or enough days over that you know your period will end before you have to leave, then the best, the most preferable choice, this is a sunnah of Aisha radiallahu anha, the wife of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who went through the same thing, right? It's to wait until you are pure, you are clean from your period's ended, you've taken your shower, and then go make your tawaf, right? That is the best and the it's the gold standard of what we'd want to happen, right? Unfortunately, as Sister Khansa mentioned, we all have these pre-planned flights and pre-planned packages and things like that. So that might not be a possibility. That might not be a case. That might not be the case, I should say. And so because of that, there's been two other um, kind of like options that we're going to go through and discuss, which are kind of like concessions for if you're not able to do it the way that, where you get to stay for longer, what does that look like for you? So Sister Hansa, if somebody is not able to actually stay through the end of their period, one of the options I know is on screen. Do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure. So there are pills that the doctor can prescribe, which will delay your period or even stop your period. There are a few things we should be consider of. Number one, of course, you consult your doctor. You ask them, "Hey, look, this is my situation. What do you think is the best?" Number two, there are rulings that change if you do start bleeding in between. So you have to be careful of that. Definitely, like if you are in that situation or you are going to take the pills, definitely consult with any scholar. And if you're more comfortable with a female, you can go ahead and reach out to us too, or anyone you're comfortable with, and go through the exact situation. But definitely, if you are planning to, you do take the pills, then it's as if, you can go ahead and um, take the pills, do ghusl after bleeding is done, and then go ahead and perform tawaf.
Yeah. So just to add on here, I think the the recommendation would be if this is a consideration, this is an option that you're considering by, like as Sister Khansa mentioned, looking at your dates and saying, oh, I might get it, during the days of Hajj, or I might have it right before Hajj or things like that, and you're considering taking these pills, it's best to talk to your doctor from now because, medically speaking, they're these cycles, they have like a certain turn that they take, and so it might be, as Sister Hansa mentioned, that even though you're taking the pills, you start bleeding, right? And so again, best to consult with a doctor as soon as you can so they can start you up on a regimen that works best for you and your body, right? But again, this isn't something that we're encouraging that you must take pills or you should take pills, right? There is absolutely no blame Islamically for a woman who decides not to take the pills. Of course, this is, it's not stipulated, or no scholar is going to be here telling you to take these pills. We're just offering it as an option that, some people do use, and it is one that you can consider in consultation with your doctor. And if you do use those pills and either they, obviously for I think one of the scenarios that people want is just to delay the period completely so that it doesn't come in the days of Hajj. But if it's the other way around, we're using it to stop your period, then once the bleeding stops, you go ahead, take the ghusl, and make your tawaf, right? But again, this has to be in consultation with both the doctor and a learned scholar because there will always be scenarios that arise that it's like, okay, I took the pills, I made my tawaf, and then some bleeding started afterwards. And so because of that, we'll have to look exactly at the dates and get into the very specifics of your situation. So this is one of those options where it's there for you to consider, but it also has specifics to your scenario that need to be well thought out, inshallah. And then
Uh,
that, sorry. Yeah.
So I was just gonna add something from my side, in this specific scenario that we just discussed, about the pills. Personal experience. I've done it before. This is just personal experience. I'm sharing it because I've been through it. Where it's been a hassle with the pills. So definitely, like, if it's the Tawaf ifada is going are the days of your period, then definitely you need to, go with that. Maybe you need to go with that option, right? But if your period is will end right before, then like advice is don't bother with the pills just because there's so many scenarios that come up with that, inshallah. So that's just my
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my 2 cents here to add, I always hesitate to talk about the pills because I've never used them. And I've been in situations where I have had my period while in Mecca and, have had to go through some of these options that we're going to talk to you about right now. But, for whatever reason, I've never used them. So I always hesitate to recommend them to anyone, but I do offer them as this is an option. Neither Sister Khansa or I are medical doctors, so we, of course, say that please do consult your doctor, like first and foremost. And yes, if you can avoid it, it's usually easier to avoid it because it has so many complications involved. And so the situation and the option that arises if you choose not to go with the pills is option number three, right? Here we give a little bit of detail because different scholars have mentioned different um, kind of like outcomes of this, right? So if Tawaf is sorry, if you Tawaf is happening at such a time where you're not sorry, if your period rather is happening in such a way at such a time where you're not able to make the Tawaf before you leave Mecca, right? Or you're not able to get off of your period and become pure from your period before you leave Mecca, right? The option here is for you to actually go ahead and make tawaf while you are in a state of menses, while you have your period, right? This is not the best option, or I should say, it's not like the golden option. The best option is always to wait until after it's done. But because of the fact that the way packages work and flights work and all of that, those later day scholars, like the scholars, contemporary scholars of today, have mentioned that because we understand this difficulty and, there's so many regulations and rules around when to leave Makkah and things like that, because of that, they have allowed this option, right? So you may go ahead and perform your tawaf while you are still bleeding, right? And if you go ahead and do this, what is the penalty? What is the blame, right? Is a person sinful? What is the case, right? So firstly, of course, this is from Allah. Allah plans better than we plan. Allah is the best of planners, right? So it is not something that's in your control. It's not something that you could have changed, right? Because as we just mentioned with the pills, we think, oh, we're in control, but you can take the pills and still bleed, right? They don't always work the way you thought. So this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah has created us in the way that He knows is best for us. We are all the daughters of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, and He's decreed it for us. So firstly, that's the first thing I think a lot of sisters um, you know, will take it will become a little bit emotional and take it as like, have I done something wrong? Is it a form of punishment? No, it's not. If you look back to the life of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his wife, Aisha radiallahu anha, had this exact same thing happen to her, right? And whose, example is more beautiful to follow than Aisha radiallahu anha. So, you should almost feel like, oh wow, subhanAllah, I get to follow in her footsteps, right? But because we're performing tawaf in a state of hayd when we're not supposed to necessarily be doing it, is there something that we should give to make up for it, right? And so the scholars have a little bit of disagreement here. So the older and latter day scholars, of course, including Imam Abu Hanifa, mentioned that the penalty will be given, and the penalty is a budna. Budna meaning the bigger animal, like a camel or something, is given in sacrifice to make up for the fact that the person or the woman was in her period while doing her tawaf, right? The latter day scholars, the contemporary scholars of today, have said because it's not her fault that she's in her period, she still has to make up for the fact that she was bleeding and doing the tawaf, but it's going to be a lesser penalty. It'll be the smaller animal. It'll be the hadi rather than the big budna, right? So think, sheep, lamb, goat, something small, a smaller animal is given. And not to quote pricing too much, but I believe that's around the $200 to $400 mark. It's a lot less than a whole budna that you'd have to give. Um, and lastly, according to Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, she actually doesn't have to pay any dam. So he's looking at the fact that this is something that was completely out of her control, out of her say. Obviously, she isn't the one who's making the rulings and regulations around when she can or cannot leave Mecca. She's not the one who's stipulating when she does or does not get her period. So because of that, she won't be blamed at all, and she does not have to make up for the fact that she was on her period. And so for if you're, in this scenario where you had to make the tawaf while you're still on your period, and you're deciding what exactly is the right form of penalty or the right form of you know, the right way to make up for that, right? I would say here it's best to again consult your local scholar, your local imam, the imam who you follow for everything else, right? The imam who, when he announces it's Ramadan, you guys start your Ramadan. When he announces it's Eid, you guys do Eid, right? Because a lot of times they can give you more specific answers to your scenario as well. Although what I will say is the overall ruling, the general ruling that we go with nowadays is B. The contemporary scholars have said it will be the lesser penalty. It'll be the smaller animal. So you'd give a hedi, like a goat, sheep, lamb, that type of thing, right? The above rulings also apply to Tawaf in Umrah as well. This is an option that I have actually done in the past, so I can speak more to it, and I'm happy to answer questions about it as well, inshallah. But the same way, if for some reason, and this is outside of the days of Hajj, but if you went for Umrah and you went there and then you got your period, you already put on your ihram and made the intention, and then you got your period, and you have to leave Mecca before you get pure from your period, you would go ahead and make your tawaf while you're in the state of your period, and then you would just give the penalty to make up for it. And of course, it's not something that we do happily or lightly, right? We always pray to Allah that Allah overlook my shortcoming and that I wasn't able to do it to the gold standard because we all want to make our Hajj like the best and most proper way. But at the same time, we understand that this is from Allah and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us in the way that He knows is best. And He's given us our cycle at the specific time for a reason. Perhaps the reason is, you know, as a test to us, or perhaps the reason is to teach us something. And so we take it as that as well, inshallah. So with that, we just want to quickly run over, this is outside of the days of Hajj, but your visit to Medina, what are some things to consider? Sister Khansa, if you wanted to quickly just through these.
Yes. So Alhamdulillah, for Masjid Nabawi in Medina, it's pretty simple. Main thing, you don't enter the masjid, just and like it is a general rule that in your period you should not be entering the masjid main area. You can enter the courtyard, so the outside area of Masjid Nabawi. You can do other forms of dhikr. Of course, you are not doing your salah, but you're doing other dhikr. Um, yes, and then the
And I
next
think
would
as
be
well, just to add here, that because you're in Medina, you'd always obviously want to spend as much time as you can praying salawat and salam, sending salutations and blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which you absolutely can do even while on your period. Here, I just quickly wanted to run through the ladies' gates in Medina. Again, all of this will be covered more on the ground. We'll go and take you where to go, and also you know, in future webinars, we're definitely going to walk everyone through what the masjid looks like. But since we have the sisters here, we just wanted to go ahead and point out that there's two main areas where the sisters can enter from. So it's on the northern side of the masjid. The Prophet ﷺ's Rawda, the grave site, is the grave of the graveyard of Jantul Baqi. Both of those are on the south side, facing the Qibla, and the women enter from the north side. So we have one on the left and one on the right, the ladies' gates, right? And so these gates all, I believe everyone can see my cursor, will all be for the women. So if you are praying, you can enter from there. If you're not praying, unfortunately, you're not able to enter. But what you can do is you can sit in the courtyard surrounding the masjid. And personally, I always advise people that if you're not praying, best place to be is near the grave site of the Prophet ﷺ, where his Sallallahu is buried, because then you can obviously sit and focus more and more on sending salutations and blessings upon him, which maybe if you were praying, you would be busy, you know, in your salahs and stuff. But because you have this opportunity, you can spend that time even, you know, spending more time sending the salutations and blessings on him than you would otherwise. And as far as, you know, sisters have questions about visiting the Roda, obviously how the visit is going to take place and all of that will be covered in a different webinar, but specifically the sisters who are on their menses, they cannot enter the masjid, which means you cannot enter the Roda because the Roda is also part of the masjid. And so what you can do is you can still give salam to the Prophet, as I just mentioned, and so you can do that from outside. Those who know there's a green dome right where the right above where the Prophet ﷺ is laid to rest. So you can sit around where the green dome is, and it helps you, you know, you kind of sit there and you look at the green dome and you contemplate and you understand and come to the realization that Rasul ﷺ is there, right there, and you make your salam with that in mind from outside of the masjid. But unfortunately, for those sisters who are on the roda, you would, sorry, who are on their menses, would not be able to actually enter into what they call the roda today. And so with that, inshallah, I believe that we've covered most of all of the information, inshallah. So we'll go ahead and open it up for questions.